They give some.
Welcome to University Drive, your pathway to the transformational work of University of the Bahamas. Our goal is to build a better Bahamas by shaping tomorrow's leaders today, finding solutions to challenges, and forging new opportunities for growth. University Drive, where faculty, staff, students, and alumni travel the road of progress together with you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to University Drive. Disruption and adversity have caused a steep pivot in higher education as academia has had to learn how to adapt and still thrive. For University of the Bahamas, especially now, identifying critical goals and engaging collective support are crucial, just as crucial as leadership is in bringing about progressive change. On the 1st of August 2022, Dr. Erik Rolland assumed the position of president of UB. He joins us as our guest for this episode of University Drive Season 9. Dr. Rolland, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. Tell us something about who Erik Rolland is.
Who Erik Rolland is? That is a good question, something I've been pondering. That was a philosophical answer. But no, Erik Rolland is, I would say, an academic, a professor, a leader, a consultant, a person who grew up in a country close to the North Pole and has spent most of his academic career and career in general around the world. That's a little bit about him. He spent the last 30 years in California, certainly been impacted by that, but have had really wonderful opportunities working in many countries across continents, both North America and Asia and Europe and Australia, and had been very fortunate to have been given a lot of opportunities throughout my life. Within higher education leadership, particularly.
So you've been in different environments. What kinds of similarities and differences have you picked up on?
Yeah, universities are funny institutions in some sense, and exceptional in some sense, and that is that we are really monastic institutions that are built on the same principles, no matter which country you're in. The focus in terms of the individual missions of the individual universities you run into are, of course, some of them are more teaching focused, some of them are more research focused, some have a mix of both, some of them are polytechnic or experiential in nature. But outside of their focus and their mission, so to speak, the structure of the organizations are remarkably similar across the world, and that's been very interesting to be able to observe, taking part in the running of for delivering education for many different institutions across the globe. So yeah, no, we are remarkably similar. It's not. I think it's driven by our missions to both create new knowledge and to disseminate knowledge and to be of service to humanity. And I think that is fairly international as the base mission for any university. We are here. The world today requires more education than it has in the past, in the sense that we have to prepare our workforce. We have the pace of change increasing, and that means that we have to upgrade or upskill ourselves through our lives to a whole different extent than what we had to do 50 years ago. So this is something that I think all universities are engaged with and share. And in terms of how they deliver it, some of them are delivery methods are slightly different depending on where you are, but otherwise remarkable similarity between universities across the globe.
I'm curious, Dr. Rolland, when this opportunity presented itself to potentially become the leader of the University of the Bahamas, what appeared attractive for you, particularly for an institution whose mission really is to support and drive national development, the national development of the Bahamas? What
Yeah.
motivated you to even um, apply?
Yeah. Well, my intrinsic motivation is in terms of my life is giving opportunities to other people, the same opportunities that I have had for education, and that's been something that's been driving me in all of my previous jobs. With the University of the Bahamas, I saw a phenomenal opportunity to help individuals and communities and a nation build up a leading university, and that it was very, very attractive, and that was my real motivation to be part of doing that. I have had an opportunity, very fortunate to have had an opportunity to do that in here in the state of California, which is, I'm sure you know, is one of the largest economies of the world in the world, and it wouldn't be there if it hadn't been for its educational system and its foresights that started in the early 1960s with how it was going to build up its higher education. Within that context, I've been very, very fortunate to be sort of a strategic and operational institution builder in higher education. That has to do with building new programs, building new schools, building new campuses. And all of these sort of align with the strategic potential and the operational capacity building that has to happen, is continuing to happen at the University of Bahamas. And I saw that as being a very good fit for me and for the university, obviously, in my biased opinion there, obviously, but I saw that as being a very, very good match for what I care about. I have to be passionate. I have to remain passionate about what I do. If I have no passion for what I'm doing, I wouldn't do it. And I have to say that the demands of this job, the way I interpreted it, and my passion aligned extremely well, and so that excited me to be able to help take the UB to its next level.
So, what are you focusing on initially? Because you are new to the Bahamas and new to the university. And so, what does one do having been appointed to lead University of the Bahamas and taking on that challenge, taking on that opportunity? What have you been focusing on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that when you go to a new place, whether it's a new state or a new country or a new continent, when you enter a new organization, the top of your list is going to be, first of all, learning about the organization, learning about its processes, learning about its policies, learning about its culture and its people, and of course, on a broader sense, doing the same thing outside of the organization as well, right? But that's how you enter any job. So you really focus on learning and understanding the context and the culture, and that's been a real wonderful experience for me, and a strong focus. And I continue on a daily basis. It's not something that's done overnight. But in addition to that, I think that in terms of the job itself, in addition to all the learning that I find phenomenally interesting, and I find the people so incredibly welcoming. But in addition to that, of course, I had to my focus has been on building an effective and efficient leadership team within the university, and on increasing communications with stakeholders at large, and that's an ongoing process. But those have been sort of the first two areas of focus as a newbie to the UB. And being new to the Bahamas and the Bahamian people and the Bahamian culture.
You have an extraordinary role in that higher education system, in the UB system, as the leader. But really and truly, you're dealing with people. What is your philosophy? What's your outlook on leading, inspiring, and motivating people? people
Yeah.
in higher education?
Yeah, and I think higher education is slightly different from private organizations in the sense that we have employees that often are have better job security. I'm talking about things like tenure and so forth. So we have also with that a lot more self-governance. We have different governing bodies within a university that help us govern and lead. So my philosophy within that environment is really focusing on the importance of building strong teams and partnerships through engagement, through clarity of what you're trying to achieve. That means expectation management and communication. With that, I think people respond to empathy, particularly today after having in the context of the Bahamas, there was first Dorian and then there was COVID. I think you have to have a great deal of empathy in those processes and in order to lead people and or in order for people to understand that you are genuinely interested in their lives and their betterment of their own situation and everybody else's situation and helping improve the institution that we work for. But as I said, I think the engagement, the clarity, and the expectation management and communication are fundamental principles. I like to add to that also transparency, and that's something that obviously takes a little while because it takes a while to learn and understand where is all the information, how do I get to this and that information, and how can I share what's relevant to others in terms of that information. So that's a little bit about my philosophy.
Do you think that leadership looks different or is expected to be different, or there's a clarion call for it to be different with people today having experienced the calamity of COVID-19 and then the monstrous nature now of climate change and really other disruptions, not only on a global level, but on national levels, on the level of how it's impacted their families, their communities, themselves as individuals. Do you think that leadership must be different, a little bit different now?
I do. I think it has to be very different. It has to be, like I mentioned, much more empathetic. Because what happens today and what you're seeing in many countries, not just in our neighbor to the west, but what you are seeing is the big quit. People are just throwing in the towel and saying, I'm not going to do things anymore that I don't care about or I'm not passionate about. And if I'm not treated right, I'm going to move on. I think we have a much more, we have come to an awakening as human beings that we need to focus on several aspects of our lives in addition to just our work, and that has COVID has been a wake-up call in that sense. It's been a wake-up call because it was a challenge, and it was a challenge in that you had to shift from being perhaps free to go to work every day to having to do childcare and work at the same time and having people around you who were sick or in many cases dying. And I think that really has brought in the need for much more collaborative, transparent, and empathetic leadership in organization. Because what you want to do is you want to retain your talent. You want to continue developing that talent. You don't want to lose them because you are inflexible. And you are seeing it in some organizations. There have been several large companies that we read about, that we all know and hear about, that have said, "Oh, everybody's going to be back working full time in the office from such and such dates." And then you see big uprising amongst the employees and saying that we are not coming back, and so the leaders have to understand what's driving the employees and how do they keep productive and keep the employees happy. There is much more of a focus on that now than there was pre-COVID, and that is That is a leadership challenge. It's also an HR, a human resource challenge in general, because now you have to have different policies. You have to have different policies on remote work. You have to have different policies and perhaps on vacation leave or compassionate leave or whatever kind of leave you can think about. And that's been an area where many organizations are very, very challenged. So so clearly, navigating that landscape and keeping your talent and developing your talent and keeping people happy and enabling them to have balance in their lives is really key for you to have good performance in the organization.
So, Dr. Rolland, you are the president of UB. You've had a couple of months to find out things, to connect with people, to have some key conversations, to do your initial assessments. What have you observed?
Well, that's a good question. My main observation, I have to say, the first and most important observation for I think it is the most important in any organization that you run into, is that we are very fortunate at the UB to have great, hardworking, and innovative people. And I'm not saying that without evidence. I'm looking at all the work that has been done over the past couple of years while in COVID in, for example, developing new programs, the work that's been done in restructuring our educational offerings and restructuring how we work as staff and within the university. And there's been, I think, phenomenal resilience among the people at UB. I don't think we really have missed a beat, as we're seeing from our enrollment numbers. They are constant, and that's really a phenomenal thing to see, because it's something that most universities are really struggling with. And we were, of course, afraid that we had to struggle there as well, but we've kept that constant, and that is because we have these phenomenal people who are doing what it takes and are continuing to do it. So that's my number one observation. And the number two observation is that there's no lack of challenges and opportunities. So I'm saying both challenges and opportunities. I think when you transition an organization from a startup to a growth enterprise, which is what UB is doing right now. UB as an institution, even though there's a long history of the COB, which is very helpful when you're building up a university, but UB as an institution is only 6 years old. And we are going, when you start anew, like the UB was started in 2016, you are really an entrepreneurial startup. You are focused on getting things done. And now we are converting to be what's called in organizational life cycle, it's called a growth enterprise. And when you go from that when you go through that transition from an entrepreneurial startup to a growth enterprise, there's going to be some turbulence. There's going to be turbulence in terms of new technologies, new ways of working, new policies, etc. In short, many things will change, and change is generally something we have gotten better at through the COVID-19 pandemic, I would say. We have gotten better as human beings at change. But at the same time, our human brains have evolved to really like certainty. So, which stems really from our basic human drive to survive, right? We have evolved mentally to predict and control our circumstances, because doing so it really optimizes our ability to survive. So when we as humans experience change, our brains can interpret that as a threat or as a challenge, sort of the flight or fight syndrome, if you like. So a strong ability to manage ambiguity, along with a focus on data-supported guidance of our decisions, really are what we need now in order to navigate through this next period. So that's and in response to that, I'm teaching a seminar for our middle managers on managing through change and ambiguity. But those are my observations, and we're working very hard on taking advantage of the opportunities that are there around us, and we continue to work very hard on working on our challenges.
Change and ambiguity. I want us to get into that a little bit more after we've taken this break that we're going to take. You're listening to University Drive. Our guest is President of University of the Bahamas, Dr. Erik Rolland. We'll take a break and be back after this.
My name is Tracy Thompson, and I am here as a Wilson Award grant recipient. My research publication is called That Black Men Could Rule. With the rise of European power over the past 500 years or so against the Arabs and then over time against other opponents, has come the rise of an ideology. That ideology maintains that whiteness has special value and that people who possess this particular property can lay claim to a higher level of humanity. That perspective, in turn, has led to what can only be called a sustained assault on the idea of blackness. And part of that assault has taken the form of claims that black men cannot think. And if black men can think, they cannot feel. And that if black men can feel, they do not care. And these stereotyped claims have been muted in the past 50 years or so, but they are experiencing a resurgence. I hope that the study demonstrates that the university can continue to produce intellectual products of global caliber.
For more on the Wilson Awards and the Wilson Grants to fuel Bahamian research, contact grants@ub.edu.bs.
Welcome back, everyone, to University Drive. Our guest is President of University of the Bahamas, Dr. Erik Rolland. President Rolland, before we took the break, you had referenced the term change and ambiguity and having to navigate and manage and operate and produce through change and ambiguity. What are the changes and what are the ambiguities that you have to be mindful of as a president and as a higher education system, particularly now?
I always answer that question with another question, and my question is gut tolerance ? But I think what it really means to deal with ambiguity from an organizational perspective and from the human mind's perspective is that you have some competencies, right, that you need to be able to develop. Generally speaking, we all have developed more tolerance and more of these competencies during COVID, I think, than we had before. But some of those things are you have to be able to tolerate and manage change effectively, which means basically sometimes that you have to be able to shift gears and change course quickly and easily. It means that you have to decide and act without having all the information that you like to have in order to make a decision. You have to, in short, tolerate situations where things are up in the air and they haven't been decided on because we're in this liminal state where we can't make a decision. You have to be able to move between tasks and activities without having to finish each one, typically, and we see this every day in our work at the university. And you have to be able to tolerate and be comfortable with taking some risks and making some mistakes, and that's part of the uncertainty pictures, right? So we also have to be more flexible with mistakes. We all make mistakes, but certainly we look at them as a path to improving, as a path to learning. So what I like to say from a leadership perspective is that real leaders can let you fail without you feeling like a failure. That's my first observation. And my second observation on it is that, successful leaders fail every day, and that includes me. And that's part of ambiguity and change. It's not the exception in ambiguity and change. We do things and we may have to revert, right? We make decisions and then we may have to say, well, maybe this wasn't such a great idea. So then we have to be able to stand up and say, yeah, you know what? I thought this was a great idea, but it's really turning out not to be so great because we didn't have all this information when we started doing this. And so those are ways that it impacts us both as leaders and as institutions, in terms of this ambiguity that we are dealing. When we're going to see it as it continues.
I'm glad that you say it continues, because I want to ask how, as UB evolves and forges a path forward and progresses, how is it handling the objective of quality assurance and continuous improvement?
Continuous improvement in higher education is an old thing. It started in the 1920s, and it has developed really over the last 100 years to be very sort of mission focused and relatable to institutions, no matter where they are. And today, that kind of quality assurance is really recognized through what we call international accreditation bodies. And those are very critical to success of any university, because what it does actually, it is trying to hold those accountable, the schools and degree programs, whatever thing we are delivering out there. We're accountable, and we're saying that this is of high quality, and the accreditation process really is there to boost public trust and confidence in that. And that means that we have to do things that may not have been part of what we did 10 years ago. We have to assess our programs. We have to be retrospective and reflect upon what we do and how we do it, which is really good for anybody, anytime, anyway. We all know that, but it's hard in the middle of trying to push forward to sit down and be reflective and retrospective all the time. But that's what it does to us. It does the quality, that type of quality assurance does help us as an institution in pursuing access to funding, which is really, really good, grants and philanthropic support. And it also maintains private sector confidence, which means outside organizations and companies are going to want to work with us. They're going to want to be partners. Other results of this, of course, is that, you can transfer your credits easier to other institutions. That helps both incoming and outgoing students from the UB. So, and it gives us much, much, much better access to international students. So the quality assurance that we do through an accreditation really helps us attract resources that are critical to our growth from many different sources. Internally, it's very good for our colleges and schools to have these processes, because through those processes we generate data, and that data can be used then to acquire the adequate resources that ensures that we are delivering high quality teaching and research down into our colleges and schools, and that's really important. So that's sort of the impact of quality assurance, and it is it is an international trend, and I would say more or less a requirement to operate in the international space, because of the fact that you need some standards by which you agree on are good standards for high quality higher educations.
So I think this is a very good place to ask then about how the university should be forging ahead with continued robustness of its academic programs. One of the things that some people might say right now, especially with us having experienced COVID and other external shocks, is that confidence in higher education and the need for it has been waning. How do you tackle that? How do you approach that?
Yeah. Well, I think if you look to our big neighbor to the west, your statement seems to be true from what I will call a perception lens. So there's been a survey that's been done over the last 3 years on the percent of Americans, so this is for the US, who said colleges have a positive effect on the way things are going in the US, okay? And in the 2020, people had 69% of people had confidence in the universities. In 2022, it was down to 55. So has confidence in higher ed been waning? Surely. However, from an economic perspective, a university education is the best tool for an individual to climb the socioeconomic ladder. And it's true not only for the individual, but it's true for countries and states as well. So on one hand, you may say, well, it's been waning in people's perception, and there are many reasons for that. But from an economic perspective, it hasn't really. If you go out there and look at job requirements, in most cases, you still have to have degrees, and I'm sure that you can make it in the world without degrees. But the hard time that you're going to have is if you lose that job and then you have to switch later on in life. People are going to look for, well, what are your marketable skills? And the degree still ranks the highest on those of those factors. And with that, of course, there's things like certificates and certifications we are doing today. They also rank high. So I would say, COVID-19 contributed to this global 10-year fast forward in terms of how education and technology and work and personal life and all of that is managed. And I think what we are seeing is that the demand for upskilling and for higher education has shifted, as have the expectations of those who seek those new skills and degrees. So I think we've sparked an extraordinary need globally, really, for resilience and reinvention of the educational system. You are seeing already the traditional face-to-face model is being displaced by a plethora of other choices. And education really has to now be this vital component that exists synergistically with work and family lives and can be delivered when needed. So in short, I think that the perception of education, higher education in terms of confidence and it waning, I think that that is a short-term issue. I think every university, UB being one of them, we find ourselves right now in a period where we have to experiment with the right modes of learning for the right audiences at the right time, right? And our degrees may over time be composed of and sometimes replaced by these what we call stackable credentials or certificates that actually constitute new combination of skills that we didn't even think about 5 years ago. So advanced degrees and certificates, those are the ones that are dominating right now in terms of new offerings. But, the teaching modalities are going to change. We're going to do more modalities are going to engage with technology such as augmented reality and virtual reality. And really what we have to do as educational institutions to regain this confidence is that we have to show the world that we can enable learning modalities that best bring value to the learner and organizations, given their subject matter and the context. We have to find the right ones for the right context and the right learner. And that reinvention of higher education, I think I would argue, has just started. COVID has been the obvious excuse for all of us to start thinking about it, but we haven't come up with the answers. The final answers are still out there. This has just started.
Give me an example of the stackable certificates and credentialing that you referenced.
Yeah, so these stackable certificates, typically you can think of now, we think of a degree. If you look at an undergraduate degree, we typically think of people going to school pretty much full-time for 4 years, and then we hand them a diploma. Now, these stackable certificates would say, or stackable credentials would say, well, listen, you do these 3 courses, we're going to give you some sort of credential. You do 5 courses, you now have some sort of certificate of some sort. You add on to that 3 or 4 other certificates, and all of a sudden now you have a bachelor's degree. So it's those chunks build up different. We don't build up 4-year chunks and say, here's a 4-year chunk that's called an undergraduate degree. We chunk it differently, and we deliver this in terms of shorter, maybe more intensive modules, and those modules put together or stacked on top of one another, if you like, they will make up the certificates and the degrees that are needed in society. So it will be a new way of recombining, what we do. It will be a new way for us as a university to be more cross-functional. It will you see it already in many places. For example, media and technology skills are very much in demand right now, and particularly the combination of media and technology skills. And that really means that universities have to put together things from different schools or colleges into new types of programs, right? So we provide a module from one place and a module from another place, and all of a sudden we have a new degree that we wouldn't even have imagined a few years back.
There's also been this clamor for flexibility in educational delivery, virtual, online, hybrid options. How is UB expanding its capacity to deliver that? I would imagine that you're not just returning to face-to-face classes and that's it, right? You must be working on getting the technology and the infrastructure in place so that you could be a little bit more innovative in the delivery model and flexible, right?
Absolutely. I think if you look at currently what we are doing, it's 60% is face-to-face and 40% is not. And when I was talking about experimenting with modalities and even for that matter, stackable things, part of that is really, what is it that our customers want? If you look at the working professionals, clearly they want modalities that won't require them to travel somewhere. If you look at somebody living in the family islands who want to complete their degree perhaps, or they want to get a degree, but they are in a situation where their family life and work life is such that they can't relocate to Nassau to do so. We have to make sure that we have options for everybody so they have access to that education. So and that access can mean different things. Maybe there are certain things that you can do using technology and virtual methodologies, and there are other things that you can only do face-to-face, but perhaps we can do them face-to-face in more compressed time periods, right? So all of those things are experiments that I think that we are entering into now and figuring out how do we best serve our customers and how do we give all the people of the Bahamas, whether or not they're working professionals or out of a job or in high school looking for a university, we're giving them all options that they want and that suits them. And I think that's really the challenge across the globe in terms of higher education, because this need for like I said earlier, reskilling or upskilling isn't going away. Technology is changing so fast that that we have to be able to continuously learn. And so this concept that we've been talking about for a long time about lifelong learning is definitely with us. We're serving different audiences, right? And that means we have to use different modalities. At UB, what we're doing is we have started to enable some of our classrooms to be what I call, in my lingo, high flex classroom, which means the students could potentially have a choice of either coming to the classroom or not coming to the classroom, and it would be their choice. That is one modality that's being implemented in many places, and it's a popular modality because people don't necessarily have to fight traffic or distance or fly far or take a boat somewhere in order to go to class. So that modality is certainly going to be a very flexible one, but that modality may not fit every profession, right? There are some of our profession that require a lot of hands-on experiences. And in those experiential learning modules, they are more prone to either being delivered in person or maybe with the help of some virtual reality technology and so forth. So all of this, as I said, is really, we are at the beginning of this experiment, and our faculty are experimenting as to what they do in class. They've had 2 years of playing around, so to speak, during COVID, and one of the things that you are seeing is that they've figured out how to do things in virtual mode that they couldn't do in the face-to-face mode. And that changes the game a bit, right? And now the question is, what do we really need to do face-to-face versus what do we do virtually? And how is that virtual delivery? Is it delivered via virtual reality? Is it delivered synchronously, asynchronously? We have all these choices that we have to, we really have to build a portfolio of those deliveries in order to address the audiences that we have to serve.
Okay, very good. So you've said a lot, and when we come back, because we're about to take another break, I want to talk about the idea of financial sustainability and also of developing partnerships. You're listening to University Drive. We'll be back after this.
Hi, I'm Sonia Farmer, and I'm a 2022 Wilson Award Grant recipient. So my research project is called Indelible, and it's an oral history archive documenting experiences with and within citizenship, with and within the Bahamas. And this project is composed of 3 parts. Overall, it's a digital humanities project, but there is an oral history archive which contains testimonies engaging with experiences with citizenship in this country. The second part is a collaborative art project where the participants also complete an altered voter's card however they would like. And the third component is an educational framework which provides toolkits so that we can engage with the crisis of citizenship in this country. So even though I'm coordinating this project and I've conceptualized this project, it's really primarily a collaborative project. I will be working with at least 50 different people speaking to me about their experiences with citizenship to make up this oral history archive. And I will also be working with historians, artists, human rights lawyers, and many other folks to create educational frameworks on the website as well so that we can engage with the history of citizenship and the current reality of citizenship. So it's really a collaborative project, and I'm really excited to be bringing everyone together to examine what it means to be Bahamian.
For more on the Wilson Awards and the Wilson Grants to fuel Bahamian research, contact grants@ub.edu.bs.
Welcome back, everyone. This is University Drive. We're talking to President of UB, Dr. Erik Rolland. Dr. Rolland, being progressive and focused, but still with UB receiving the lion's share of its budget from the public purse, right? That might seem to a lot of people to be like a contradiction almost. What are your thoughts about UB's financial sustainability?
Yeah. Well, financial sustainability means having a clear vision to, if you want to use the term, sell to any of our stakeholders or partners or customers or others out there. So what we are working on now is just in the starting phase of developing that clear vision, so that we have something to sell, right? Because if you don't have a product that people find valuable, obviously it's going to be hard to be financially sustainable. The other thing is we have made great strides in creating graduate programs that are in demand. Particular degree programs that are coming online now pretty soon, and we also have some certificate programs and continue to develop certificate programs. And this what I'm saying, self-supporting graduate programs, I mean these are programs that are perhaps not directly supported by the financial support we have from the state, but they support themselves, right? So in terms of tuition, those are incredibly important for any university. That is one of the ways that universities actually create more of a diversified financial picture. The other thing is to have partnerships with industry, to have partnerships with nonprofits, NGOs, civic organizations. That's another really, really, really important factor for us, and one that we are already pushing and developing in many, many areas. So these are key issues. This is three of the key issues. The final one is, of course, engagement with our alumni and with our friends is important. But that engagement and then that philanthropy that we derive from those engagement, that's a longer term project, and it is perhaps not something that we can do as quickly as we can in terms of creating these graduate programs and derive revenues from that. So the picture here is people tend to think that, well, if we just had an endowment and somebody gave us a lot of money, all these problems would go away. That's really not the case for most universities anywhere. So that's not the key. The key is what are we doing to help ourselves? The partnerships, the new offerings that people want to see and have, and that lead to that provide real value to the outside world. And that's where our focus is.
But isn't there an opportunity too for the expertise of faculty to be leveraged in this financial sustainability kind of model through research and grants and other kinds of engagements like that?
Absolutely. I mean, when we talk about graduate programs, of course, the nice thing there is that if these are professional graduate programs, then you have the opportunities for faculty to really shine in terms of providing their expertise to perhaps working professionals and others, and that provides a lot of value. It also drives research productivity and opportunities for grants on the research side, clearly, and that's areas where we are focusing strongly on. So having graduate programs, more graduate programs, will certainly drive that faculty engagement, and the faculty engagement in I would say diversifying our financial support. It's really key. It's really key. That is how it is done.
What's the approach to access and making UB more accessible, not only across the archipelago, but across the region, across the world? What's the approach to that? Have you been able to think through that?
Well, there are several approaches to it. I mean, one is, of course, a stronger online presence, if you like, or a stronger presence of programs that are relevant up to not just to the Bahamas, but are relevant to other places outside of Bahamas. And that is something we have been thinking a bit about, and there are some definite advantages in the Bahamas that are really important to global challenges. When it comes to sustainability of our oceans, for example, we sit on phenomenal resources and research centers, right, that can be used to study in our oceans and to monitor the environmental changes. Clearly, for us, it's important to build access across the archipelago, as you said, but that international access has to be built as well. And that means we have to have potentially more relationship and exchange agreements with other universities. We have to offer up our research facilities to people coming from other countries who want to study and help us solve big global, particularly environmental challenges. And it has to, our accreditation, these things are also driving parts of it, because people will come if they have a quality assurance on the program side. So this is really key to building access, and we have thought about that. And as I said, having a unit that deals with global education within the university, or global research or research exchange, is something that is coming to the forefront in terms of my thinking, in terms of the needs. That kind of a need would help us be more visible internationally, but it would also help us bring resources to the Bahamas that we need in order to grow the university.
And as things are happening, as you're growing, building, developing, re-envisioning, how are you involving or engaging or even inspiring faculty, staff, students, even alum, donors, partners in this overall effort? What's the message to them?
As of October 2022, we are still reinventing ourselves, no doubt. In fact, higher education, like I said before, just started its major overhaul. So expect new technologies to enable new learning modes, expect learning modes and contents to be tailored better to individual skills and learning styles. Within the UB, expect the shift in focus on professional development and continuous learning for all of us who work here. We will see transformational changes as we reinvent and as we build a more resilient university. And my message internally to all our internal stakeholders, certainly, as well as to the external, would be engage with us in that transformational process. We've had a lot of interesting discussions, both internally and externally, about this. And as we now are moving into our visioning period of visioning over the next 6 to 7 months, there will be more opportunities for others to engage in sort of designing that transformational change. It won't be done in one semester or 1 year, but rest assured that we are really committed to reinvention in order to provide a better future for us all.
And so, what are you keeping as your compass in all of the things that must be done?
I think my compass, I think I started out with this, but it's really this opportunity to positively impact thousands of students and their families and the communities and lives around the Bahamas and beyond is really key to my own motivation. The effect of that opportunity to impact lives is really a more robust Bahamian economy that is fully synergistic, I believe, with the National Development Plan and is focused on education, health and wellness, the economy, and then the environment.
Well, you've been at the helm for 2 months now. What have you been encouraged by within the university community?
I have been encouraged by our people, our students, the ones I've had a chance to interact with, student governments, our staff that I interact with, leaders at the university that I interact with, and the Bahamian government support of its flagship educational institutions have really impressed me as far as UB goes. It really has been a very positive experience for me, and given me the confidence to say, yeah, we can actually do this together.
Okay, well, as our time together winds down, I want to leave it open to you. Do you have any kind of parting thoughts for us?
I think that the number one parting thought is, I hope people are willing to engage with us and have a conversation with us and look at the UB as their first choice when they are seeking education or an educational partner, whether they are high school kids or elementary school kids, or whether they are professionals working out there currently and they're seeking to go to the next step in their career or reskill themselves, upskill themselves. Look to the UB. We have so many exciting things happening at the UB that I really wish for everybody to come and look at and be engaged in what we do and look at us as your partner.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you so much for joining us. You're welcome to come back whenever you like.
Thank you so much for having me, Tamika. I really appreciate the time with you and your inspiring questions.
You're welcome. And thank you to our listeners for joining with us and connecting with us. This has been University Drive. Don't forget to stay connected with University of the Bahamas. Visit www.ub.edu.bs. Also, like, follow, subscribe on all of our social media channels across Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok. Just look for us and follow us. I've been your host, Tamika Lundy. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for joining us for University Drive.
University Drive is a production of the Office of University Relations and the Communications and Creative Arts Academic Unit at University of the Bahamas. All rights reserved.